Hi, and welcome to this quick tool review. So this time around I'll be reviewing an accessory for calipers from Brown & Sharpe. It's also made by SPI. Toyo makes a set of cone versions much like this one looks like, except these cones unscrew off the end and can be replaced with any of these accessories here, including the slightly larger cone section, the small rods, and some various size discs. They also can be screwed in on any of the sides, which allows for a variety of measurement capability. I bought them specifically for the conical ends. So to put these guys on, the first thing you do is you zero your caliper. If you have a analog style caliper, you still do zero. If it's a vernier, it's not a problem. If it's a dial caliper, zero the caliper. Next up, to mount the tips after it's zeroed, you put the calipers on the back because it has two sets of set screws. Some of the other manufacturers only have one set screw, which is not as good. The second set screw would find itself on the slope part of the caliper head, so that would make no sense to put it there. These two guys are pin aligned, which makes them meet together properly. And if you have a Brown & Sharpe caliper, or one that is, oops, got it backwards, one that is closer to the dimensions of the depth of these slots here, it should read 0.375, but apparently the jaws on the Toyo are slightly different because I'm not getting 0.375. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my jaws to 0.375, like so, and I am going to tighten the top, or I guess it doesn't matter which one. I will tighten the bottom one first and make that my fixed place jaw. And I will push the other jaw till they meet, so it'll be just slightly off of bottomed out, so that I can get the appropriate 0.37 size spacing. Because when you have it aligned like this, then the tips are currently 0.375 apart. So there we go. Oops, got the lock on there. So should be able to come back. It comes back pretty close, within 1/2 thousandth. So now, if I want to measure bolt hole spacing, I could line these guys up, get the conical points centered in the hole, and 0.396 spacing on these two holes, for example. So it's great for even numbered bolt hole spacing. It has a variety of other measuring possibilities. Like I was saying, I could put discs on the end, or I could have discs sticking out like this. Then the amount you subtract will be somewhat different. But these are all carefully ground. So I could turn around and set my zero again and measure this, and that would be my zero, and I just subtract that from whatever I was measuring. If I went outside measurement, if I did inside measurement, I'd subtract twice the thickness of these outer discs. That's another option. There's some bigger cones for bigger holes, and there's some small points to get down in holes. Once again, if I mount them, say like this, the center of these are aligned with 0.375 inch spacing, so you'd have to subtract one thickness of this. But it allows all kinds of specialty measurements that, as long as you don't need to be hyper precise, will help you get really fairly close. So again, like you could measure the slot spacing between these two slots. I would just take off the discs, the points on this guy, put in the pins, and run the pins down until they're on the inside of the slots, and then divide by 2. I'd have to know the slot thickness to ultimately find out the center of the 2 slots, but you can see how they'd be really valuable. So that's the first thing. I got them specifically for the conical points, and as I mentioned, if I'd bought the Michutoyo pair, about 65 bucks list price, they're built-in conical and they don't have any other points. So I opted to get the multi-point set to give me more options, even though I didn't need them at this point. This set was around 120 some bucks on eBay. So I think that's a pretty good price for precision parts. They're not hyper precise, but they'll get you close. The next set of tools I ended up buying because of Tom Lipton over at Ox Tools. That guy always cost me money. These are called pillar files, and they are perfectly straight and flat along both sides, but they do taper from top to bottom thickness wise. I've got a combination of Grobet and Nicholson, and they go in size between 00 and number 4. Number 4 being the finest, 00 being the coarsest cut. And they're cross-cut files, but again, all sides of them are non-marring, non-cutting. They're pretty handy. They cut well, and I like the fact that they're flat, not tapered. That helps me because my hand-eye coordination isn't great. This last file is a Nicholson, and it is a clean cut file. Haven't used it yet, but these curved teeth on it, they're machined in, and it's supposed to leave less marking on the surface of a part than a regular file. Got a piece of cold rolled here, and here are the pillar files. And you can see they leave, this is the coarse one, and it leaves some decent marks, but it cuts really well, really removes material quickly. Here's the finest. I'll just jump right to it. And this guy, got to be careful because when it loads up, those little particles that load up in it scratch the surface. Yep. I recommend buying file cards and keeping them around because they're pretty handy, because files tend to load up pretty quickly, especially on the softer. Yeah, like this stuff loads it up pretty quickly. So this fine file, I think you got to be pretty close to a polished finish before you use it. Let's go up a couple steps. Here is a 0 and a single aught, and it cuts nicely and quickly, but it is leaving some pretty big scratches in there. Here is my number 1. That leaves a nice, finer finish on it. And I'd say this one, not terribly useful unless the material's a bit harder, because this one loads up pretty easily, or maybe put a little bit of oil on the file before you use it. I could try that. Let's give that a shot. I have a piece of cold rolled here, and here is the coarse pillar file. Leaves some pretty big scratch marks, takes off material really quickly. Doesn't load up too badly. It's a cross-cut file. Here is the single aught. Also takes off material pretty quickly. Doesn't load up too badly. I don't have the intermediate sizes, the 1 and 2. I jumped straight to the 3 and 4 because they were out of them when I went to buy them. I got mine at McMaster Car. Here's the number 3. Takes off material really quickly, but it does load up a little bit. Here's number 4, the finest. And this one tends to load up pretty badly, and it's hard to clean with this soft material. So a solution I found to that, which I did before I used it this time, was to put some oil in the grooves before I started using it, and that helped prevent it from loading up so badly. Last but not least, we have the machined edge file for clean cut, and this is a really coarse one. It takes off material extremely fast, and I will say it doesn't load up, of course. The finish isn't as nice as the fine on this, but it's nearly as good, and it takes off material really quickly. Although you have to use it lighter to get the best finish, you can't really bear down, or you tend to get some big chunks or some big grooves in the surface. I'd say its big plus is you can get a nice finish if you go kind of light. And it doesn't load up because these are really deep machine grooves on this guy. Alrighty, so here are the tools of the week. Again, I like them all. Got to realize the limitations. I do find putting oil on the finer files helps them from loading up, prevent them from loading up so much. This file really removes material fast and can get a finish almost as good as the finest pillar file. It also does not cut on the edges, which is nice, because if you're clumsy like me and you're trying to work up to an edge without marring the bottom part, you know, the one surface, just the one you want to file, it's pretty handy for me. Occasionally you need to use the edge, but I've got files for that because almost all of them are that way. I also appreciate that these are straight, not tapered, because it makes it easier for me to control with my poor hand-eye coordination. I got all of these files at McMaster Carr. Two of them are Nicholson, two of them are Grobit. This is a Nicholson as well. The caliper measuring tools from Brown & Sharpe, caliper extensions, are really handy, and they give you a whole variety of other options of measuring. Can be really handy. I got this for $120 some, as I said earlier, on eBay. The Michutoyo just conical point extensions are $60 some. SPI and a bunch of other manufacturers make kits like this. Not as many accessories as this one, but pretty decent. If you can find this Brown & Sharpe set, I kind of recommend you get it sooner than later. Here is the part numbers for it, because the problem I had finding it was I went to the Tessa site, because Brown & Sharpe got bought by Tessa, and then Tessa got bought by some bigger company, and I couldn't find these anymore. When I went to their caliper accessories, they weren't listed, so you might want to hurry and get those, or you can always buy the SPI or the other brands. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you find it useful, and hope to see you next time.